Recently, I installed this little guy called a BLTouch from Creality. It's an aftermarket product that allows you to do auto bed leveling on the Ender3 V2. I see V2 because the later boards in V2 allow for sort of seamless plug and play of this BLTouch sensor. Now, I was in two minds at first, is it really worth the time, effort and money to install auto bed leveling on an entry-level printer? But after having done so, it looks like it's taking care of a lot of that first layer print headaches that one can have when the bed isn't sorted. This is what I did.
The box contains the sensor itself, colored connector wire, some tie straps, and of course a mounting bracket that's used to connect to the X-axis runner plate, as well as some M3 screws. To access the printer's main board, one needs to undo 4 screws, 3 at the bottom, with the longest one being furthest back, sort of closer where the cables come out, and 2 right at the front. Flipping the printer over, there's 1 at the top, sort of towards the center. Once open, you'll find a 5-pin connector next to the rainbow ribbon cable for the screen and the sensor cables for the printer. This matches the 5-pin connector, the larger one of the two, from the provided BLTouch cable. Now, just make sure you pop it in there right way around, and once that's done, it's got to be run either along the cables and just tie strapped, or within the sleeve that houses the cable. I chose the latter of the two options. A bit tedious, but the way to do this is to grab the cable and the sleeve in one hand, and with the other hand push the sleeve towards the cable. Then in that hand grab the cable and let go of the first. Repeat process until this is done. When you reach a destination, make sure to strap the cable and sleeve down. This will ensure that everything stays in place, and of course that the sleeve doesn't fray. At the end, just snip it off and tidy it up. Be careful of the sharp edges on the aluminium cutaway coming away from the main board. This shouldn't be a problem if everything's tucked away nicely. So just bunch it up, hold it in place, and stick the cover back on. And then it's just redoing the screws and getting that into position. Remember the longest of the 3 screws at the back, and once it's all in place, just flip it over so that you can tend to the last screw at the top of the printer. I prefer to close everything up before moving on to installing new components, but I suppose you can do it the other way around as well. Once closed, you can pay attention to now positioning the cable in the right spot. Of course, this head assembly is a little bit different, but using a bracket, it'll also be in the same place on the left of the head assembly. Take the small 5-pin connector from the cable and line it up with the BLTouch, the crimp sides facing forward, and gently just slide it down, press on the sides. Try not to work on the cable, but the clip itself rather. In my case, white on the left. With the standard runner plate, one can just use the 2 M3 screws and attach a little provided bracket onto the plate on the left hand side, and then from there the BLTouch onto the bracket. In my case, I'm going to use the bracket that is part of the custom head assembly, but it all functions the same. When the BLT is connected, you can disconnect the Z-axis limit switch, even remove it if you want.
Once that hardware side's taken care of, the next step's firmware. Now this can be found on Creality's site, which one then downloads. Load it onto a blank SD card and insert the SD card in the printer. When the printer is switched on, it'll automatically boot up, recognize the new firmware version and update itself, and thus allowing the BLTouch to be recognized and to be interacted with. From there, it's calibrating the printer.
When you now press Auto Home, it'll go to the origin position and then the center of the bed, where it'll do an initial probe followed by a finer detailed probe. You can adjust the Z offset by going to the menu item for Z offset and decrementing the value or incrementing until you find that the nozzle head is the correct distance from the print bed. Once you're satisfied, you can use the auto bed leveling function that'll enable the probe to create a matrix of about 9 points across the bed, which it'll then use in its print function.
Once you've calibrated everything, you can also go one step further and add the code line G29 following G28 in the slicing software. And just that about 2 minutes to complete the test, which means every single print gets recalibrated and rechecked if there was any bumps or so to the plate. And that's it. Enjoy printing.